We've actually had zero trouble at any of our events so far. So hopefully, knock on wood, this one continues. Everybody's been wonderful so far as we adjust to this digital landscape. So that hopefully is not going to be an issue, but just in case, now you guys know that we're really serious about it. And we're already getting comments through the chats, by the way, saying that they just finished Grown a few hours ago and they're blown away. So was I. I'm so excited for tonight. All right, so if you guys are ready, I'll get going. I'll give a quick spiel and then I'll just turn my camera off and let you guys go.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank
you. And what time do we have a hard out?
No. I think we have, I don't know with the webinar how it works, but I think we have it shut to set off around, or set to shut off around 8:30, but I can extend it if you need, just let me know.
Okay.
But usually they've been running about an hour with the virtual events, but it's your guys' show, so.
We'll see.
All right, let's see how it goes. All right. All right, well then let's get going. It looks like we've got a full group here tonight. Thank you for being here, everybody. As I mentioned earlier, my name is Carrie and I work with the Anderson's events team. And right above my head, I'm just gonna get right to this because you're probably wondering why is my email address, and that is actually because we are building this digital events program from the ground up. And we would really appreciate any feedback you guys have, from everything about how the ticketing went to communication regarding the event to get in, like the links and stuff, to how the event format went. Anything you guys have to offer us or let us know about, we'd really appreciate. Those of you who've been with us for a while know that we are Anderson's Bookshop, and we have been in business actually selling independent books since 1875. Which means that we have survived a lot worse than COVID, including the 1918 flu epidemic that everybody compares this to. So we expect to be here on the other side, but you gotta, you just gotta adapt or die. So we are adapting to this digital landscape, and we really want your feedback on how we can make that as great an experience for you as possible. So if you don't mind sending me a little something afterwards, I'd really appreciate it. Otherwise, I just really want to take a second to thank you guys for being here. It is a very hard time to be an independent business, and every single ticket purchase tonight actually is personal to us, and we are deeply grateful for your support of our program overall, the entire events landscape, and then of course following us into the digital landscape as well. We just really can't say enough how much it means to us, and it really does make a huge difference in your own communities. And now I guess we're expanding to this nationwide community. That's the one really good thing about the digital events. So thank you for being here. I know you did not come to hear me talk, however, so let me go ahead and introduce these two amazing ladies that we are so excited to have here tonight. We're so proud to welcome Tiffany D. Jackson to discuss her newest book, Grown. Tiffany is a TV professional by day and a novelist by night, and the author of Monday's Not Coming and Let Me Hear a Rhyme. Her debut novel, Allegedly, was a recipient of a 2017 NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Literary Work for Youths and Teens. And then Laurie Halse Anderson is a New York Times bestselling author. Two of her books, Speak and Chains, were National Book Award finalists, of course. They also changed the world. She was selected by the American Library Association for the Margaret A. Edwards Award for her significant contribution to young adult literature, among many, many other accolades and awards. And we're so excited to have her here to be in conversation with Tiffany tonight for what is bound to be an amazing discussion. And on that, I'm going to bow out and let you ladies take it from there. I'm here to help moderate comments after you guys are done speaking, and also I'll be posting a link where you can purchase Grown throughout the night in the chat as well, if anybody's interested in that. All right, take it away, ladies.
Thank you. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. You've been sort of on the road for a week now. The book came out a week ago. Happy book birthday to you. So what has this tour been like for you? Just real quick before we get into the meat of it.
It's actually been rather comforting in a weird way. I was just actually talking about this at an event last week that I was at, that I, digitally flew to. I think there's something because of the subject matter of this book, I think I'm really appreciating the fact that I am home and I'm talking to people, but I'm not like absorbing everyone's energy, especially with the hard topic of this book. So I'm in my safe space. I'm still in Brooklyn. I'm, still, around my friends and family. I just literally left my mom this morning.
Nice.
And so I feel actually pretty good. Like, I'm not fully exhausted. I don't have that anxiety of like traveling, and I'm not like, sitting in a strange hotel room, like decompressing, the one like downside, of course, is like, I would love to, obviously be in Chicago, and, eating really good food. And, and of course, seeing readers and seeing kids, that's the one downside of all of this. But it's been actually a nice change for me in terms of touring. So, and yeah, I get to like kind of hang out with like, my friends like you at like random cities. Like, yeah.
Definitely easier on the body. There's no question about that.
Yes.
So, for those, some people might not know what the book is about yet because it's only been out for a week. I would just sit here and I would say it's awesome and you have to read it if you're a human being. But can you give people kind of the nutshell about what the book is about, like what's your elevator pitch, and then help us understand how this fits in with your arc of your career in your previous books?
Ooh, good one. Okay, so pretty much, so Grown is about a 17-year-old aspiring singer who is swooned by a legendary yet older R&B superstar, promises of fame that leads her to turn against her friends and family until he's found murdered, and all fingers point to her. So now she must find her voice to prove her innocence and also shed light on her abuse. Right. And as far as this is fitting into my arc of my career, which is an awesome question because I was kind of like thinking about that as well. All of my books, that pretty much up until this point have been loosely inspired by real cases. So this is loosely inspired more by the reaction to the R. Kelly documentary than that case than him as the man. Because, this type of abuse, this inappropriate age relationships and, sexual assault, that could almost apply to anybody, any like, high power figure. There's so many of them that, it's almost like hard to like, keep count, honestly. So I wrote this book in that vein to truly sort of explain how something like this can happen, because that was one of the things that came up when the documentary first aired. Was there was a lot of questions like how did parents not know? Girls must have knew what they were doing. It was nothing but like victim blaming, right? And I really wanted to peel back those layers and start from the ground up, basically, to be like, this is how something like this can happen. And a lot of people have got a lot of comments about like, well, this is for kids. Like, why would you write a book like this for kids? And I'm like, that's who we should be starting with.
Who do you think gets victimized the most? Right? And when sexual predators target children or young adults, right? First of all, they are harming somebody in a way that will often last the rest of their life. And that damage done to them often then continues to make them vulnerable to other kinds of abuse and manipulation. I got to tell you, I've been using my chainsaw. I was up in the woods for about a week, and my husband loves me, so he got me a new chainsaw. And thankfully, there's a part of the land that has to get clear cut, so I'm doing it. And whenever I have a chainsaw in my hands, it makes me feel very powerful. And what I kept on thinking about your book, because I knew this conversation was coming. And I really want to go into the details about your book, and I want to talk about the word grown and the layers of implications coming with that. But, I'm done with people saying, well, she should have, or the parent should have. You know what the should belongs to? The should belongs to the predator. The predator should not have touched that child. The predator should have kept his pants on. He should not have manipulated her. The people who are the criminals who are harming and touching other people's bodies without permission, that's where the blame goes every single time.
Mm-hmm. It's something about like people looking for whataboutisms. Like, well, what about that person? Or what about this? And why didn't they do that? It's almost like, why are you looking for every single other excuse other than focusing your anger and your frustration or whatever feelings you have on the actual perpetrator?
Right.
I never understand, like, why are we talking about, you know, it's sort of like, why are we talking about blue when red is standing right in front of us? Like, why are, it's just like, why are you doing all this stuff? Like, why are you making this way more exact? Like, it just, it frustrates me to know.
If an arsonist burned down your house, it's the equivalent of people saying, you should have built with bricks.
Yes.
You know, instead of saying, no, that person who dragged the kerosene and the flamethrower, that person needs to be arrested and put away.
Like, well, you should have known better. And I always say, like, no, he knew better. Like,
He knew better.
He should have done it. No, no better. It's actually, he did know better. That's why there's so much secrecy.
Precisely.
That's why all these relationships are under the guise of, you know, disguising under like different type of, I don't know. It's interesting when I think about like the amount of secrecy that goes along with these type of relationships.
Yes.
And still you're talking about the girls, the children,
children
who are involved.
And that's why we need this book. And that's why we actually need middle school versions of books like this, right?
Yeah.
We need to have the courage to actually talk to our kids about sex. We need to have our children prepared for the fact that there are bad people in the world who want to hurt them. Right? Because when we and our own fears stay, I don't know how to talk about that, it makes me kind of nervous. What we're doing is that by not having the conversation, we stay safe and we make our kids vulnerable.
Right. Because we don't give them the tools, if we don't give them the actual like scenarios of where something like this can happen, they think that things are okay. And it's not. It's never okay.
Never okay.
It's never okay. And so the hope is like you read a book like Grown and you dive into, you know, the psychology around it, how a girl can be manipulated and groomed. So in case it does, you know, potentially happen to you or not, you actually can identify it with your friends or your own children later in life. I think that's something that, you know, people are missing about, you know, the messaging in this book, that it's not about like, you know, oh, we're just exposing kids to these traumatic stories. No, this is about, these are teaching opportunities that you as parents are too afraid to actually take the moment to do. You are too afraid to teach your children about hard things. So let us take that off your plate and give a child a story.
It is so much easier to talk about, to kind of triangulate as a parent, as an auntie, as a grandparent, to triangulate with a child you love about a piece of literature. And you read the book together, because you know at a certain age, children's their ears develop these special doors that close. When the parent goes, we need to talk about this, and the kids are like, oh no, we don't have to talk about this. But if you say, look at this book, look at the cover of this is an amazing story. I heard somebody, you're probably not old enough to read it. It's what you tell your kid. You're probably not old enough to read it. And then you leave it where they can find it. Right. One of the things I just think that your work is so valuable and so important for our nation, everybody in our nation, is that you talk about Black victims, right? And like people talk about Speak all the time, but the truth is that white girls who are victims of sexual violence get at least a little bit of attention.
Yes.
White girls that are kidnapped get a little bit of attention. White girls who get sent to jail for something, someone's always going to try to take. But we have this, you know, this horrible social contract written in sin and blood. In this country that has led so many people to not think about all of the Black women, all of the Black girls who are even more at risk of being hurt by crimes of violence and sexual violence. But you did this also like with Monday's Not Coming and just, oh gosh. Tiffany D. Jackson, you are the voice of our conscience. You are.
And sometimes I feel that way, and sometimes I'm just kind of like, I feel like I'm exposing somewhat of the underbelly type situation, because as specifically in Black culture, we don't like to talk about house business. We like to keep things that happen in the house, and we don't.
Okay, there's going to be some of my mayonnaise people listening, so let's give me the 101 version, please.
So it's kind of like when bad things happen, we tend not to broadcast them. We like to keep things in the house in terms of this is our business, is our family business, and we are not sharing it with other people. It's kind of goes back to the whole ideas about mental health, how a lot of the Black community says oh, you don't need a therapist, you just need Jesus and you need our family. So we never had those opportunities to talk to people and kind of unpack some of our issues and some of our traumas that we've been through. And so it just kind of cycles, recycles, cycles, in a sense that we don't get the chance to, and we also feel like we don't want other people to see our pain. We have so much other pain going on that we don't want other people to see this pain that is very much covered in shame as well. So situations like this, where it's a young girl who has been, sort of swept up by an older man, there is a shame in that. And I, for one, definitely have my own kind of issues with shame as someone who has been in an age-inappropriate relationship. There are, issues of shame that happen where you don't want anyone to think oh, how can you be so stupid to get involved with someone like that? And, even now I have these moments of I'm out here talking about all this, and I still feel very and even the PSA that we did with Nick Stone, Donna Clayton, and Ashley Woodbook, and we all kind of talked about our stories about, being sort of approached by older men. I had this rush of shame about it. I had this rush of I don't want people to think that I am dumb or that I was this ditzy girl. No, there was a lot involved in that situation.
Yeah.
And that's what I think we need more of. We need more people to come out and say things that they've actually been through, to give, girls sort of hope, honestly. Because one of the things that I feel we do miss in our rearing of children, I only have dogs right now, but in the rearing of children is we forget to tell them that we have made mistakes too.
Yes.
And that we are not perfect beings. And I feel kids would actually really, you can actually connect better with kids if you actually admit to the fact that, you've done dumb things too. And I think that that's a way to actually open up the door to the communication so that your child can kind of learn from your mistakes rather than you actually just telling them not to do something. Because obviously, if you tell me not to.
Oh, yeah. Gone out the door.
I mean, that chocolate cake. That's, yeah.
And I do think, I did raise some kids, and I do think those sometimes, depending on the family dynamic, but also depending on sort of the personality of the kids, right? Because each kid get to own who they are. We can't, expect them all to behave in one way or another. One of the things, we are in the golden age of YA literature right now. Thank all the gods, right? Yes. We are finally beginning to have representation of all kinds of different kids. And so we are creating situations, and we are creating a body of literature so that it doesn't always have to be a parent trying to give the right lecture at the right time or trying to be that good at you, that they can see in books. Like you just talked about your shame. And first of all, thank you. And I'm just sending you love and hugs because that's hard to talk about.
Yeah.
Right? And you have to become very vulnerable to talk about that. And it also triggers in your amygdala those old, very painful memories.
Yes.
And the more you do it, it gets a little bit easier, you know, and imagine the 13, 14, 18-year-old who reads this book and sees themselves and their experience reflected on the pages. Imagine the shame they're in right now. And so you have given them such a gift by saying, you know what, this is real. What you're feeling is real, and you're allowed, we all make mistakes. You are not at fault here. This book is it's a lake. It's a lake of understanding and forgiveness that your readers get to swim through and come out on the other side.
This is truly like my hope about this book, is that it does sort of inspire, you know, either if you are in this situation, or if you were in this situation, or if you know someone who is currently in a situation, it's an opportunity to sort of like lay out the entire scope of everything that's happening and give context.
Right.
And that way you come from a gentler, more compassionate place, which is something that I feel like our country definitely needs a full injection dose of, is to just come from a compassionate place, which actually leads me to something that happened earlier today. I got an email. So the book, actually, if you haven't read Grown, at the very front of the book, there is a content warning. And it lays out all the things that are mentioned in the book. So, you know, there's rape, sexual assault, kidnapping, addiction to opioids. I hope I said the word right. And I put that, you know, and one thing I have to say is shout out to HarperCollins, because they've been fully on board with this book from the very beginning. There have been no pushback from them, which is pretty impressive in this industry, quite frankly. So one, there was no pushback about the content of this book. Two, they actually suggested that to put a content warning on this book. And three, when I said, like, can it have its own page, they didn't even balk at it. They were like, sure, cool. So I got an email this morning from a person who's reading the book, who said, and I'm hoping I'm paraphrasing right, you know, love your book, blah, blah, blah. Do you think that content warning is a new age, like censorship or something like that? And it really kind of like, it gave me pause, because I was just like, censorship? What? So I've been thinking about this email literally all day. And I finally am trying to get to this point where I could answer it, because I do want to answer it. I do want to answer it, and I do want to publicly answer it as well, too. The idea of content warning and censorship.
Well, I might have a little bit of history. Is there a chance that the person who wrote that was an educator?
Maybe, I don't know. But and that's the thing. I love the question, because it really it gave me a pause.
Right.
I never really thought of. I don't really delve into the weeds too much of the censorship conversation about Twitter, but I think that some topics deserve content warnings. And specifically, like anything, I mean, and content warnings is, and Laurie, you probably can say this better than I can. And content warnings is really mostly to, you know, protect people who have been through something that like this, that could elicit traumatic emotional responses yet again. So the whole point of this book is to teach, not to re-victimize.
Right.
So I think that that's where my feelings about this content warning lies. It lies in the idea of being compassionate to the very people that I am trying to voice.
For a while, there's been a couple of waves of from different groups, educators, parents, and things, who have wanted like age labels on books in YA, as YA kind of grew in the last 20 years.
Okay.
And I think the publishing industry and book selling and writers have gone, yeah, no, because first of all, we do have age labels on books where publishers set, but also, you know, we recognize it's your responsibility as a human being to think about the person you're buying the book for. I once had a parent say that their second grader read at a 12th grade level, so they were buying Speak. Ooh. And I said, would you let your second grader date a senior in high school?
That's an answer. My God.
You know, so but I think we've come really far since then in a really great way.
Right.
What you're talking about, I actually prefer the word care warning or a note of care and concern.
A note of care and concern. I like that. A
Yeah.
care warning.
It's yours. Take it. Especially in 2020, right?
Lori, where were you like a couple months ago?
Girl, I'm always just you have my number. But I think it's lovely. I think it's the right thing to do. And it's your book and you got to decide it. And that has nothing to do with censorship. What I wonder if maybe that person might be thinking, oh, shucks. Now the people who want to censor the book are going to find out that they need to censor like on the first page, right? No, they're going to find out anyways, right? They're going to, yeah.
May start like a trend, and that every book is going to feel like they need this, which I don't feel like every book needs a trigger warning.
Oh, no. This one does, though.
No, this one does.
Yeah. No.
I'm not even gonna lie about it. I'm like, this one does, but I feel like sometimes people, and I was talking with Bethany Moreau about this, that sometimes people label trigger warnings on things are everyday experience for Black people. It's like, why do you need a trigger warning for something that I deal with every day? And coming into this industry, I didn't feel like trigger warnings were necessary because I was kind of like, why do you in your safe space get a trigger warning when my behind leaves my apartment every day and see stuff that triggers me every day? Like I walk out and see cops at literally every single day as soon as I walk out the door. So why do you get to have the privilege? Like what a privilege it is for you to be able to have a trigger warning versus other kids out there don't. But in the sense of this book, I do feel like this is sexual assault and sexual violence that we're talking about. This is not the everyday life of people. So it's a different type of situation. But it was a very, I appreciated the question, quite frankly, because I appreciate
that's a good one
to kind of like think outside of my box.
Do you want to talk about your writing process for this book? Yeah.
So to be honest, all my other books, they're loosely inspired by real cases. Oops, sorry. And typically I do a lot of research for the cases that I'm, covering. So I will talk to lawyers and doctors and everyone in between to get all the facts. I'll method author. I'll go to the locations and stuff where my books take place. But this book, I didn't have an opportunity to do that, mainly because this case was still sort of ongoing in different ways. Either if it was Weinstein, if it was everybody, everyone's case was still going. Then this case really involved a lot of he said, she said. And further, it was a lot of anecdotal information and stuff like that. So it wasn't like a murder case where there was like, facts and figures and autopsies and all that kind of stuff. So it was different for me. And plus, what my therapist kind of said, this was a lot of soul searching, soul research that you had to do to actually get the story down, because a lot of the emotion in this book was me. So this is probably my most personal book. And therefore I wrote it really, really fast because I didn't want to stay in that dark place for an extended period of time. So I wrote this book pretty much in a month, and I edited. Editing took several months, but I wrote it in a month. I just was and then just word vomited.
That's amazing.
It was draft zero. When I sent it to my editor, because there was sentences that weren't even finished. It was just nothing else after that. You could tell I was just in a zone. I was writing this, and I sent it to my editor, and I was really kind of waiting for the try again. I wanted someone to come in and be no, which is one of the reasons why I went through the process of getting so many beta readers and so many from all walks of life. I mean, like I sent it to you because I was like, I'm not publishing this book without your blessing. I sent it to like so many of my other friends, writer friends, non-writer friends. We got sensitivity readers. We got a psychologist on board to actually also like read through it to make sure that and she had a lot of great, amazing notes. So we were able to incorporate everything. And if you have read the book, the ending was actually not the original ending.
That ending. Oh,
there was
you're so good at endings, Tiffany. Oh my gosh. I wish you would teach a master class on dealing.
How to do that, but yeah.
Oh, you're so good at it.
This one was actually, the original ending is like a little different than what is actually published. And what actually happened was a lot of people were like, I'm surprised you didn't do this because this would have been more a Tiffany Jackson book. And I said, I think I was scared. I was a little slightly scared to take it to that next level. And mostly because I think that, and I don't know if some people can maybe sense the hesitancy throughout parts of the story. Like, I don't know, sometimes I was a little hesitant to even go a little further in their love relationship. I just wanted to like kind of touch upon it and be like, okay, no.
but for me at least, that was in keeping with who and where she was and how old she was and how unsure she was. It's almost like your reflections of still kind of deciding about plot points and emotional tones almost felt like it came through her own insecurities and indecisions and feeling lost.
Yeah, I think I definitely, because originally when I first sat down to write this, I wanted this to be a book and verse. And so I tried it for about a week and was like, oh, hell no. I'm not there yet. No. Really just like, let me close all these notebooks because this ain't happening.
Yep.
And which is why the chapters are so short, is because they originally started as like, small, versus then they went to vignettes, and then there's like a zillion vignettes. So then it ended up like kind of like, pulling them all together, which is why everything like moves pretty quickly within the actual story. So yeah, it was that first week where I was like, I'm gonna get creative, everybody, and I was like, oh no. maybe soon I will write something in verse,
right?
Because I do love the art of poetry. I love the art of like, I love the art of telling a story in such few words. Like that is a skill, Laurie, that you 1000% have, that I'm like, I need several more words.
Yeah, I think it also depends on the story. The story tells you the form that it needs to be in.
That is a lesson, y'all. Write that down. I hear that too.
Yeah.
I think, I feel like another story later down the road. Like, I know, like, I have, like, there will be a book and verse in me. And I know I will, like, reach that, like, pivotal point in, like, the game.
Yep.
That I have, like, been playing all this time. But I think this was definitely a stretch for me, creatively. Yeah. Creatively, this is definitely, hard in terms of, having to pull from my own emotions.
Right.
Writing a story that's so compact and so, painful in a lot of ways, but not be like torturous.
Right.
To have it be more like a learning experience rather than it be like a torture porn.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, because I think I also wanted to respect the victims. And that's like the whole point of like us being storytellers, right? Is particularly in these type of stories, is like, we don't want to insult the people who actually have been through this and are still on their healing journey. And I feel like that was something I was trying to focus the most on.
Yeah. The other thing that I love, but it agonized me a little bit in this book, was that you have a childhood dreams. right?
Yeah.
Oh, and we teach our children, we want everybody to have their dreams, right? We want everybody to have that shot or many, many, many shots at trying to do this hard, impossible thing that they're drawn to. And I hope that'll be other conversations within families or schools or, you know, faith communities where the book is read, and book clubs. This needs to be a book club book, y'all. It really, really does. Book clubs all over America.
Especially like the parent-kid book clubs. Like those are
those-
like the dopest book clubs.
They
I really learned about like this past year. How like parents will come into the school and read with the kids, and it gives you something to like connect and talk about. Like, and you're both coming from the same level because you're reading the same book. And
they are blessings. They are absolute. I've also heard about families if they have a car and if their family has to spend family time in the car, either like going to grandma's house or just, you know, going to school or practice or whatever. You know, you get to a certain point and your kids like really don't want you to ask how school was that day because it sucked and you don't want to be honest with them about it. So they so they start listening to an audiobook.
Oh, that kind of reminds me. My mom and my brother used to listen to Harry Potter on the way back and forth.
There you go.
From school. I like hesitated to mention her. I'm sorry, y'all.
That's okay. That's all right. We didn't know about her then.
Yes, I'm like, you know, this is great. And like I always say, all your faves are problematic. So yeah.
But yeah, no, I think you know how when we have stories like this that show a young person enchanted, wanting, you know, and then she's get this opportunity comes, and like I would totally have done everything she did. If that had been my dream, totally done that.
And that's what I think adults kind of forget is that fire in your belly for your dream. Like, and what you would do to just achieve that dream, that fire, like really sort of kind of dwindle out as you get older because, you know, you come to the reality of things, of bills and insurance and, you know, world leaders and nonsense and all kinds of other fuckery. Like, but when you are young and you are still kind of like not aware of everything else around you, that fire that burns in your belly for like your dream, it makes you completely blind to a lot of different things. So when there were so many people who were, you know, chastising the victims, even in like, you know, the Bill Cosby situation or in the Weinstein situation, I always tell the story, and this is like this is like a real thing that actually happened when because, you know, of course, before I became an author, I was working in television, and several years ago, I got an opportunity to go do a assistant position at Weinstein's company, and it was for an interview. And I was so excited because I was like, this is my chance to break into movies and stuff like that. And I happened to go to a networking event the night before my interview. And I, you know, was telling this Black woman about like, I'm really excited about this interview and stuff. I'm like only like 2 years up, maybe 3 years out of college. And I'm telling this Black woman, I'm so excited about this interview. And she was like, where's the company again? And I was like, oh, it's the Weinstein Company. And I'm like listing out all their things. And she was like, cancel that interview. And she literally was like, she was so dead serious about it. And I almost didn't listen to her.
Yeah.
I really was sitting there like, well, what do you mean? This is an assistant position, as if like this is the biggest in the world. But still, to me, a starting point, she was like, don't go to that interview. And I went home and I was like thinking about over and over again. Finally, I canceled. I didn't even cancel. I didn't even just show up. I didn't show up at all. And my mother reamed me out. She was like, that is so unprofessional. Like, why are you listening to some like, you know, lady? And I was like, I don't know. Just something about her spirit, the way her face made me say that's not the best place to. And, you know, after that, I didn't have a job for like several months after that. And it was like, I had turned down a paying gig because of it. But when I tell you that was like a blessing in disguise, I'm like, listen to people, listen to your angels that come around, because I don't even know who that woman is today.
Yeah. Oh man.
So there are so many moments like that. But when I say I was devastated to turn this interview down, because I had such a fire in my belly about being able to make movies that I probably would have done anything. And so when I think of all the women who have been under Weinstein in that situation, or who, you know, have been in situations where they have visited their producer's office late at night and stuff like that, I 100% get it because I've been there. So I think that's one of the things that adults tend to forget as they get older, is the idea of following a dream and having passion and doing anything to achieve that dream that makes you somewhat blind to some of the other things that, you know, could potentially harm you. And I think we need to give grace to that and give grace to kids and have some compassion for and empathy, honestly, for, you know, the feelings that they're having, and find a way to communicate better of how to be safer, I guess. Is that the word?
You think about culturally, everybody is inundated in this culture with this message that you follow your dreams, right? All the time, all those stupid posters in the dentist's office, you know? And it's like everybody who gets like their first like big break, especially in the arts, in movies or music or literature, there's that great story, which is usually not the whole story. Usually there's a much longer years and years of work that went into that, but we feed this to our kids, and so they have because they're kids, they don't understand it. And I think that your book is really teaching me in a really deep way that I didn't look at before, that when we teach them to dream, when we want them to dream, we have to also support them with some tools for survival. Some tools for survival.
Tools for survival.
And everybody out there, any educators following us in this conversation, social emotional learning, this is a piece of that, like SEL. Social emotional learning means teaching kids how to read a room. It means teaching kids how to set up appointments for like, oh, this nice guy wants to hire me, or thinks that, you know, he thinks I could be a model or whatever. Then this is what you need to get out of that appointment, and you make sure it's this time of day, and you tell somebody where you're going. You take somebody to be with you in the waiting room, because it's professional.
Yes.
And it's professional because it keeps you safe.
Yes. There is a question in the Q&A box. I figure we have about 15 minutes. So
okay, let's do it.
For anyone who wants to throw in questions in the Q&A, that'll help us figure it out. The first one is, I know. Okay, so I'm going to read the, okay. Tiff, you are the master of YA page turners, no question. Thank you. Thanks. Any craft advice on how to keep a story moving for readers, even through heavy emotional beats? That's my queen, and she lives in Chicago. So
nice.
So the biggest thing that I tell people is, in order to keep people like turning the page, is to end every chapter on a cliffhanger. Mm-hmm. And a cliffhanger could be like, you know, literally a cliffhanger, like, oh my God, someone's about to die, or it's an emotional cliffhanger, or it's just like a clue to something. So that is my biggest thing, is to leave something that makes people be like, well, what is that? What does that mean? One of the best examples of this in my first book, Allegedly, there's a moment where she's like, you know, it doesn't bother me that, you know, they messed up my house. What bothers me is someone else has a knife in the house. And it's like, ooh, well, who else has a knife? And she has a knife, or what's going on? And so it's a question of like just throwing sort of red herrings out there to get people to be like, what is happening? So that's the biggest piece of advice I give to people, is to make sure that every single chapter ends with some type of cliffhanger. And the second piece of advice I would say is to keep things very compact in terms of how you tell your story. I know that's hard for, like, you know, fantasy writers, because there's world building involved in that. But I've read some recent fantasy novels who their worlds are like, you don't find out about the world until like much later, and that all the action like starts immediately. And so I think there is something about, like, you know, having a action heavy packed beginning to sort of like kind of keep your world building in the saggy middle. Saggy.
Yeah. That's a great question. Have you ever taught a class about writing thrillers?
Not so much about writing thrillers. I usually teach, because I'm a filmmaker by trade, I usually teach a plotting course. So I tell people how to plot, and I plot basically like a screenwriter. So it's called Plot Like a Movie.
Right.
I plot, most of my plots are basically follow the 3-act structure of most films. And so that basically makes sure that I hit all the beats. That there's something like profound happening like on certain pages and stuff like that. So I basically teach people how to make sure that, you know, your first plot point is within the first 50 pages of your book.
Right.
And I get into arguments with students all the time. They're like, well, no, like this plot happens on page like 175. And I'm like, no, girl, that's not how it works. Like, no one's gonna want to read this. What are you trying to do? And then literally I can move things around and their book will completely work. And it's just like, but it's only because I'm working, and obviously all rules are meant to be broken, but I say because I work from a filmmaker's perspective, we have 90 minutes for a 90-page script, and I am under a tight budget. So everything is going to fit here, and that's exactly how I work.
Have you scheduled, do you have any of those classes coming up for anybody who's interested?
Not anytime soon. I'm hoping to try it because I have to work on my next book and then, falling behind. But I'm hoping to open up the year with this, and that way, and it'll be digital, so that way everyone can actually come. Everything is digital now, so we could all just hang out in my living room. It's totally cool.
That's good. Okay.
Next question. What was your favorite part about writing Grown? The favorite part about writing Grown is actually the text message conversations with the Will and Willow kids. Because you got a chance to, I love, making books as recent as possible because quite frankly, all kids are having text message chains with everybody. Can
you explain who the Will and Willow kids are? So
Will and Willow kids are it's a community group that is sort of shadowed after a real community group called Jack and Jill. That's for Black kids that typically are, a middle class, and these kids, Enchanted and her sisters and her siblings, are in this group, and these kids are sort of, they're the token Black kids in most of their white schools and the private schools, and they're in this group chat together, and they're sort of talking about things that are happening, and how Enchanted and her sister are very much the outsiders because they don't really have the financial means that the rest of these Black kids have. And so they have a chat that's separate from Enchanted and her sister, and they're sort of talking about things. And you get a kind of a sense of these kids are also very smart. They're one of the kids in the group actually was saying how it doesn't matter if Enchanted doesn't look 17, she is 17. And so I think what I love most about those kind of conversations is it's not that kids aren't stupid. Right. I think it's important for us to start showing that kids actually have very socially aware thoughts and feelings.
Yes.
So I feel like I hate the fact that that's something that that people assume that we're all as if I'm a child. They just assume that kids are sort of dumb and won't understand things and grossly underestimate what they are capable of understanding. And I feel like that's something that we should tackle forward, up front. So, yeah. Next question is, do you have a favorite book? And if so, which is it and why? Same question for favorite movies, since you are a screenwriter. So favorite book is Jessamine Ward, Salvage the Bones. That is just a damn beautiful book. I can't even tell you why I love it so much. Besides the fact that it's just gorgeous writing, but it's just there's such visceral reactions and emotions that come out of me when I think of that book. Favorite movie is Carrie.
Oh, really? Oh my gosh. Oh! Whoa, that movie, man. Woo!
Laurie? That's a hard question though, but yes.
I have about 100 favorite books.
Right.
And I don't watch movies that often because I can usually predict the ending.
Okay, that's real. That's real.
Something will come up. Like when I take my shower tonight, I'll go, oh shoot, I should have said that. But
yeah.
I tend to like have favorite books within any given year.
Yeah.
Right. So this year, anybody who asked me about YA, I'm saying Grown. Anybody who asked me about middle grade, I'm saying Prairie Lotus by Linda Sue Park.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's historical fiction. It's amazing. It's amazing. But yeah, and we got some more questions here.
Okay. As a community college educator, I teach a lot of young adult literature in my class. How do you recommend approaching the content of this novel in the classroom, particularly when we think about real life counterparts to Corey and the system that keeps predators in power? That's a good question. How do you approach the content of this novel in a classroom? Laurie, what do you think?
The first thought is the response I have whenever people are trying to censor speak or take it off the shelves in schools. Mm-hmm. And I always ask if the students have access to news, whether that's through video in their library or on their tablets, newspapers, news articles, blogs. And of course the answer is, well, yes, we want our young people to be informed. Well, if that's the case, then your kids already know about this. They know about R. Kelly, right? They know about Harvey Weinstein. And frankly, there's probably a professor or 5 at that college who's doing the same stuff. I had a predator at my community college, my health teacher. He was smooth, man. That's a whole other day. But I think that actually, Bonnie, in your question has your own answers. It's like, how do you there's the assignment and have this. I could see students getting really jazzed about what are those systems that keep predators in power. That's an empowering assignment right there. What do you want to add to that, Tiff?
I was going to say, if you were talking about like things that are in the news, like this is something that's simply like a book that's attached to something that's in the news. There's a lot of books that like have been published that really are attached to either like, police brutality, social justice. There's a range of topics, and there's opportunity for you if you're teaching young adult literature and you want to teach kids how to adapt, or not teach kids, but teach students how to adapt something from real life and put it into a story and be respectful of the content of that story. I feel like Grown is a really good like sort of launching pad for that, because it is about sort of finding creative ways to tell a story that still keeps the victims and keeps people in thought in your forethoughts and be respectful. So I guess that's kind of like, I was piggyback off of Laurie a little bit, but the first thing I thought was like, yeah, if you want to teach about like real life, because I think it's important to teach books that have, real ass things that are happening in the world and reflect the world that we're actually living in. I think it's important to teach books that actually are talking about issues. So you can't always teach about, a fantasy novel, even if it does have like a theme.
But Grown gives you all the different layers. Whereas if you're just reading it like in the newspaper or there's a court case or something, you're just getting like snippets. But Grown gives you all these deep backgrounds and lots of.
It gives you the full context.
Yeah, that's it.
Like it contextualizes the situation, especially for kids. And I think that's one of the most important parts about reading books that do like touch upon issues. Is it's not just like, it's not just like a red herring in the book. It actually unpacks everything for that kid and lays it out on the table and says, here are all the reasons why things are like the way they are.
Right.
So I feel like you need that more than anything else in this world.
Those are the tools of survival.
Yes.
Those are the tools of survival.
Knowledge is a tool of survival. Okay, next question. Can you tell us about your next book, a hint maybe. Oh yeah, I can totally tell you about my next book. My next book is called Smoke, which, oh, I'm sorry, we changed the title to White Smoke, because there is already a Smoke book out there. And it is about a family who moves to a dilapidated city in the Midwest and into a renovated home, and the young girl thinks that the home is haunted, but it may be something far worse. So that will come out hopefully next year if I finish writing it, like next week. And so yeah, I don't even need to hint. That's what the book is.
That's it.
It's that's it. And then the book after that is a Carrie retelling. So.
Oh my gosh. Oh, Tiffany, you're my favorite author. It's so exciting to like, I remember when we first met, but it's so exciting to have seen you, like, now you have this, like, you have your process, you have your direction, your energy there, and it's a joy to watch.
Thank you. And it's like, I will say what I am somewhat nervous about is that this is, I'm moving somewhat into the horror space, or psychological thriller / horror type of situation. And once again, I'm, like one of the few Black women in the space. I'm, one of two right now. It is growing. And one of two Black women in YA thriller.
Right.
And it is growing. I did see some book reports for new books coming out, so I'm like, thank God. But it's always about sort of like and then it's like me and Justina Ireland.
Yeah.
In the horror space. And so somewhat it's a little exhausting, sort of like creating a road.
Right, it is. That's hard work.
It's some hard work. So it's a little daunting and it's a little scary, but I'm glad that everyone is being like, Laurie, you've always been super supportive of everything that I've done. So this is just, as usual. But so yeah, I'm going to a new world. I hope everyone enjoys. It's still me at the end of the day, even if
but and horror is a hard thing for me because I get scared. I don't really enjoy being scared. I enjoy being not scared. But like last couple of years, I've started to read a little bit. Like I read Joe Hill. And I could see you you definitely had the same chops. Yeah. All right, we got other stuff here.
Yes. Would you two consider co-teaching a writing class or workshop? I totally would rock a class with you, Laurie. Yeah,
that'd be fun.
Yeah,
absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay.
All right.
Are you going to turn any of your other books into movies? P.S. I love your books. Thank you so much. So all of my books are optioned. I'm just not allowed to say what's happening with them yet because they have to be officially announced.
Yeah.
And except for the two new ones. I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that.
Right.
All of my, but the other
published
two
books.
Yes, published books. And I don't know. We'll see what happens with them. It's interesting to be on the opposite side of this situation. I'm used to being behind the scenes in terms of film, and now I'm sort of in front. And I could tell when people are like talking to me like I'm talent, and I'm like, like I had that like feeling of like, oh, did I used to do this? Oh, this is horrible. Like that placating, like, oh, you're so great. Like, oh my God, did I used to do this? I need to change that immediately.
Would you write the screenplay for any movies of your books?
No, not the books so far published, mostly because I have a hard time chopping up my own baby. Like, I think I'm a little too attached to these first 4 books.
Got it.
Like, I can look at any of my other friends' books and tell them exactly how the screenplay needs to go, what character they needs to get rid of, like, what scene you can, like, just chop in or, whatever, like, the case, cut in, I mean. but for some reason, I can't do that to any of my other novels. So every time someone was like, we want to make your book, I'm like, really? But these next two, I think I'm going to try. The horrors, I feel like I see that more than, and that's probably because I did all three of my final pieces as my film thesis in high school, in undergrad, and in grad school were all horror movies. So I think I see horror more than I see like other things. But yes, that's a good question. And last question is not really a question, but it's not really a question, but my sophomores and I are reading Speak right now in our remote learning setup. Ooh, and we'll be focusing on issues of consent. I'm really looking forward to reading Grown and recommending it to independent reading. Thank you both for your stories to share. Yes, if you haven't read Speak, like, get your life. You have to read Speak. Probably you have to read Speak before you read Grown. I think that's
interesting.
That's how I feel about this story, is you should read Speak before you read Grown.
They really do set up interesting, you could, especially in a class, doing kind of contrasting conversations about consent. Yeah, that would be a hell of a class.
Right? Yeah. Especially for boys.
Yeah.
Like boys getting into this type of class.
Mm-hmm.
Bring the men. Okay. Sorry.
Yes. All right.
All right. Well, it looks like we are out of questions. Thank you, both of you ladies. That was amazing. I really enjoyed every second of that. I was trying to stay off camera because it turns out in webinar, if you're hosting webinar, you can't turn off your camera. So sorry if you saw pieces of my hair popping in and out as I was like crawling around it. So I'm sorry about that. Thanks for bearing with me. Like I said, we are building this from the ground up and we're getting used to the whole thing.
Okay.
But that was an amazing conversation that really made my Tuesday night. Thank you so much for being here tonight, for sharing all of your thoughts with us, and of course, your amazing books with all of us. They are life-changing. They really are. So it's just such a pleasure to have you guys here. And then for those of you left attendees who are here, I just want to remind you again to go ahead and shoot me an email if you have any feedback about the digital format and how it worked, besides the fact that you kept seeing my elbow like pop in here and now. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks. And everybody just have a really great night. I put the link for the book. If you haven't already ordered a copy of it, I know a lot of you already have. You can go ahead and order it through the link that I put in the chat, not the Q&A. I couldn't put stuff in the Q&A. So thanks so much, guys. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Laurie.
Thank you, my friend. Be safe. Everybody wash your hands. Love you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And vote.
And vote. Yes. Register today.